Tonight, chaos in Coquitlam. An RCMP officer killed and 2 others injured in a Vancouver suburb. The brazen daylight shooting.
We saw someone come out on a stretcher being given CPR.
And what we know about the Mountie who died in the line of duty.
A day like today reminds us of how dangerous this job can be and the ultimate price that is often paid.
Ottawa's new $650 million promise.
It is about saving lives of millions of people.
The course of defiance against Russia on the Hill and beyond. Plus, the societal cost of a decision more people are making.
I love the idea of being a mother, but I don't love the idea of struggling.
Why young Canadians are choosing not to have children.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina.
Good evening, everyone. Men and women who risk their lives every single day on the front lines are once again mourning the loss of one of their own tonight. 51-year-old Constable Rick O'Brien, a decorated 7-year member of the RCMP, a husband and father, was shot dead this morning while executing a search warrant in a suburb 45 minutes east of Vancouver. Tonight, in an emotional scene, fellow officers lined the procession route while the officer's body was transported from the crime scene. CTV's BC Bureau Chief Melanie Nagy starts us off with what we know so far.
The sound of sirens flood a BC neighborhood after shots were fired in a building, sparking chaos and confusion.
Especially with all the SWAT team and everything here, I don't know what's going on.
At first, people were told to clear the area. Then numerous police cars, including emergency tactical teams, arrived. Not long after, the province's premier made this statement.
There's been a critical incident in Coquitlam involving the RCMP.
Officers were executing a search warrant on a residence when shots rang out. 4 people were injured, including the suspect.
We were driving, we saw a bunch of cop cars.
Carly Hodges and her friend saw one of the Mounties stumbling from the building.
An officer was limping. He had blood on his leg and he was wearing a tourniquet.
Another officer was given CPR while being rushed to a waiting ambulance. Despite efforts to save him, he died at the scene.
His death is senseless and heartbreaking. He simply went to work today and he was killed doing his duty.
The officer has now been identified as Constable Rick O'Brien.
Constable O'Brien led by example. He had a great sense of humor. He was well respected by his peers.
O'Brien was connected to his community. A bio for a conference he spoke at says before joining the RCMP, he worked with young people.
Prior to joining the RCMP, he had a career supporting youth at risk, and it's something he still felt very passionate about.
At the detachment where the officers worked, flags were lowered and flowers left outside. Police from across Metro Vancouver also came together tonight to escort an ambulance carrying O'Brien's body.
To see police officers across this country killed trying to protect their communities enrages me.
O'Brien also received an award for bravery for helping rescue hostages taken during a home invasion in 2017, and he was a loving husband and father. Melanie Nagy, CTV News, Vancouver.
After stops in New York and Washington, Ukraine's president ended the week in Canada and for the first time since the Russian invasion addressed Parliament today in person. Volodymyr Zelenskyy will now be leaving with a major pledge from Canada, $650 million over 3 years to supply Ukraine with 50 armored vehicles. CTV's Kevin Gallagher on the show of solidarity against a war that has now been raging for more than 19 months.
The Ukrainian president and his wife united politicians who are often divided.
Thank you so much.
In his first English and in-person address to Parliament since the Russian invasion, Volodymyr Zelenskyy told Canadians they are standing up to oppression.
It is genocide. What Russian occupiers are doing to Ukraine.
Between thundering applause breaks, Zelenskyy praised Canada for pledging more than $9 billion in humanitarian, economic, and military support.
Most of all, I would like to thank you, Canada, for the purely human thing, for making Ukrainians feel at home when they are here in Canada. Thank you.
Some of those Ukrainian refugees gathered outside, hoping for a glimpse of their leader, including 15-year-old Varya Sokur, who denounced Vladimir Putin.
He's a terrorist. Of course he is. He's killing my people. He's killing Ukrainian people, Ukrainian children.
Devastating Russian bombings hit a school, apartment buildings, and shops today in the Donetsk region. Ukrainian forces struck Russia's Black Sea Fleet headquarters as well.
And I thank you, Canada, for being a real example of leadership.
Zelenskyy says he appreciated Canada's latest 3-year commitment to supply and train his troops, but later downplayed concerns of some U.S. Republicans trying to block billions in funding and NATO member Poland pausing equipment donations. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says it's not only Ukraine's independence at stake.
If Russia were to win, Canadians in their daily lives, in their grocery bills, in the opportunities they have for the future, would be directly impacted.
After arriving in Toronto, Zelenskyy met with business leaders, hoping to shore up his country's economy and find partners to rebuild his war-torn nation.
We are very interested in jobs, in new business, in technologies.
In his speech today, Zelenskyy presented Ukraine's fight against Russia as a battle between democracy and rising authoritarianism, a challenge the president will also face as he's under pressure to hold elections next year. Omar?
All right, Kevin, thank you. And at that joint news conference with President Zelenskyy in Ottawa, the Prime Minister was also asked about another foreign policy file. He rejected India's assertion that Ottawa has not shared details of intelligence that may link the Indian government to a Sikh activist killing in British Columbia. Justin Trudeau said that was done, quote, weeks ago. In an interview with CTV's Question Period airing on Sunday, the U.S. ambassador to Canada confirmed the intelligence did come from an ally.
There was shared intelligence among Five Eyes partners that helped lead Canada to making the statements that the Prime Minister made.
And as Canada's standoff with India continues, political tensions also deepened domestically. CTV's Vanessa Lee explains.
One more example of why we need that information.
BC's Premier pointed the finger at Ottawa today.
We cannot protect diaspora communities, people who have home connections in other parts of the world from foreign interference, if we don't know that it's happening.
David Eby says the federal public safety minister has reached out to make sure BC residents are safe, but information hasn't been forthcoming.
I suspect strongly that the federal government has information about that through CSIS, through the RCMP, and about how we could respond to that.
People in BC have been on edge since the murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar back in June. And the anxiety of this week's deepening diplomatic standoff extends well beyond the province.
Very sad, both countries.
Sukhwinder Dhillon came to Canada 25 years ago and now calls Montreal home.
India and Canada very nice, but I don't know what happened now.
Dhillon had hoped to take his children to India to visit family and friends and celebrate Diwali in November. Those plans are now in limbo.
Even my mother, Indian passport, she have a passport expire. She's 85-year-old and she want to see her sister over there because she's sick always. And she says she want to go India, but now very hard.
India's blanket suspension of new visas for a Western country is unheard of. It means Canadians who don't already have visas will not be able to travel there until services resume. Relations between the two countries have spiraled since Prime Minister Justin Trudeau told Parliament there was credible intelligence that may link the Indian government to Nijjar's murder.
We are there to work constructively with India, and we hope that they engage with us so that we can get to the bottom of this very serious matter.
And today, Yukon's Premier, fresh off meetings in India to attract doctors and nurses to the territory, says his government is closely watching how the growing tensions unfold. Omar.
All right, Vanessa, thanks. Disturbing new evidence tonight from the trial of Nathaniel Veltman. The Ontario man accused of deliberately hitting a Muslim family with his truck, killing 4 of them. For the first time, we're hearing from Veltman himself in the moments following his arrest. CTV's Nick Paparella on the chilling police interrogation.
It's a glimpse into the mind of Nathaniel Veltman about 3 hours after his arrest for the deaths of a Muslim family. He seems sure of himself as he speaks with London police detective Micah Bordeaux.
I know the deal already, pretty much. Yeah. I've done so much research before I did what I did.
Veltman tells the officer he's not a white supremacist, but rather someone who believes in nationalism. He blames the government, the media, the education system, and big corporations for his actions.
So I decided, all right, this is it. I'm gonna commit a terrorist attack. I would blame the Western governments for what happened. Because you can say, oh, it's your fault, Nate. You chose to commit violence. But guess what? I'm not allowed to any other option of violence. They leave you no choice. They leave us no option.
Veltman goes on to say that no one knew what he was planning.
Because originally I was going to go on a rampage, but after I felt so sick to my stomach after what I did. It was surprisingly easier than I thought. Because I thought I was going to keep hesitating, because I kept hesitating and hesitating. I was like, oh my God, I can't do this. But when I actually stepped on the pedal, it was actually surprisingly easy.
And as for his state of mind at the time,
I'm not planning on pleading insanity. I'm not planning on claiming that I was in a psychotic state. I want the world to know why I did what I did.
Earlier in the day, the court heard from one of the London police officers who arrived on the scene to assist with the arrest of Veltman just minutes after the crash. Constable Patty Levoy Costa parked her cruiser in front of the black pickup truck and testified there appeared to be human tissue on the hood and fabric on the grill. When she looked at Veltman, she said there were multiple times where he appeared to be smiling. She said he was loud. He was excited. It was a joyous yelling and screaming. He was causing a scene. Once he was in custody, Veltman says after the crash, he had a sense of relief.
I saw some Muslims walking down the street, and I was like, well, I guess if I'm wanting to send my message, maybe now's a chance. And I was like, I'm done putting this off. I'm just going to go do it.
The Crown's case resumes next week. Nick Paparella, CTV News, London, Ontario.
A Democratic senator from New Jersey is stepping down as chairman of the U.S. Foreign Relations Committee after he was indicted today on bribery charges. Senator Bob Menendez is accused of influence peddling to aid the authoritarian government of Egypt. Investigators who searched his home found nearly $500,000 in hidden cash, along with gold bars and a luxury car, all of it alleged to have been given to Menendez by 3 New Jersey businessmen.
In exchange for Senator Menendez using his power and influence to protect and to enrich those businessmen and to benefit the government of Egypt.
Menendez was also indicted on corruption charges back in 2015, but was later acquitted. Still in the U.S., we're learning more tonight about the mysterious crash of a $100 million F-35 jet from the release of a bizarre 911 call. The fighter jet went down in South Carolina over the weekend. The pilot is heard in that call shortly after parachuting from the plane.
We had a military jet crash. I'm the pilot. We need to get rescue rolling.
The pilot landed in a backyard of a home. The owner shocked at what had just happened.
I guess we got a pilot at our house, and he says he got ejected. So he ejected from the plane. So we just see if we could get some ambulance, please.
I'm sorry, what happened?
We got a pilot in the house, and I guess he landed in my backyard.
Incredibly, the pilot said he only injured his back.
How far did he fall?
I was at 2,000 feet.
And what caused the fall?
An aircraft failure.
The plane was found a day after it went missing, about 130 kilometers away. Coming up, choosing to be child-free.
A lot of people my age are just really struggling, to make ends meet.
The societal impact as more young Canadians opt out of parenthood. Plus, planet Earth prepares for a special cosmic delivery. We're learning tonight of a possible shift in Canada's long-term demographic composition as an unwanted consequence of the soaring cost of living. New data shows the affordability crisis is forcing a rethink on a deeply personal decision for many Canadians. Here's CTV's Heather Wright.
The economy, housing, the environment.
There are many reasons why young Canadians are choosing not to have children, a decision more and more are making.
The choice not to have children is a privilege in of itself, but it's also, it's a reaction to everything else that's happening in the world.
Emma Lim is a 22-year-old student at McGill University in Montreal. In 2019, she launched the campaign No Future, No Children as a way to shine a light on the impacts of climate change. 4 years later, her reasons for not wanting kids have expanded.
A lot of people my age are just really struggling, to make ends meet. I mean, we can't even take care of ourselves properly. So we're not in any position to bring children into that.
Lim is not alone. According to Statistics Canada, 38% of young adults say they don't believe they can afford to have a child in the next 3 years, whereas 32% don't believe they can have suitable housing to start a family in the same time frame.
These seem to be really deep-rooted. This isn't just a bad hair day or bad year. There's something more fundamental here.
Philip Cross is an economist who worked at StatsCan for 36 years and says this report speaks to the extent of Canada's housing crisis.
It's not just that a new home in the suburbs is unaffordable, it's that the apartment downtown where I'm living is increasingly become unaffordable.
But those surveyed were asked about their plans in the next 3 years, so their answers may be different in the future. For Emma Lim, a lot would have to change her answer.
I love the idea of having children. I love the idea of being a mother, but I don't love the idea of struggling, of being terrified for my children, the way I know that many parents right now are terrified for theirs.
The report also found young people were hit hard by the pandemic. In 2020, the unemployment rate reached 24%, the highest ever recorded. But some good news, it's now back down to pre-pandemic levels. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
Hours after the NHL's Board of Governors made it official, Michael Andlauer, the new owner of the Ottawa Senators, had his first full day on the job.
So while I officially wear the title of owner of Ottawa Senators, I understand that this city and the fans, you're the true owners.
The Toronto billionaire businessman bought the team for $950 million US, the most ever for an NHL franchise. The club was put up for sale last November after the death of Eugene Melnyk. Still ahead, rhino rebound.
It is such a major breakthrough because this has never happened.
The last-ditch effort to bring a dying species back from the brink. On World Rhino Day, global scientists are celebrating a breakthrough in their battle to save the gentle giants. Northern white rhinos are nearly extinct, ravaged by years of poaching, and so much so that today there are only 2 on the entire planet, but potentially not for long. CTV's Creason Adjkate on the glimmer of hope in the animal kingdom.
Najin is a northern white rhinoceros, a longhorn giant, and this is her daughter Fatou. They are the last of their kind on the planet, after decades of unrelentless poaching nearly wiped them out. Time is now against a team of researchers to find a way to save them from extinction.
The loss of northern white rhinos from the face of the earth is a huge loss.
Scientists say they now need a successful pregnancy. Hard to do when the last remaining male died 5 years ago, and both Najin and Fatou have been incapable of carrying. But conservationist Samuel Motisia says they are one step closer to creating new life, using eggs harvested by both female rhinos and sperm collected from the male before he died.
Subsequent lab activities resulted in 5 new embryos being produced. This brought the total to 29, and it is such a major breakthrough.
Those northern white rhino embryos will then be transferred into a surrogate mother, a southern white rhino who can carry. But there will be many tests before that can happen, which could take months or even years.
We choose the southern white rhino because they have the same gestation period as the northern white and therefore can carry pregnancy to full term.
Conservationists here say they are honored to care for and guard these gentle giants. I find great joy in looking after them. They symbolize our hope for the continued existence of this magnificent species, this man says. Researchers say that if the northern white rhino isn't saved now, it creates another devastating trend that other species can also disappear without any care. Creason Adjkate, CTV News, Halifax.
After the break.
It has to hit a corridor in the atmosphere that's just about 3 miles wide. So that's like kicking like a 120,000-yard field goal.
Delicate delivery, bringing a space rock back down to Earth. Scientists around the world have been waiting 7 years for this moment. On Sunday, somewhere over the Utah desert, a NASA space capsule carrying little more than 1 cup of some of the oldest rock in the solar system will be delivered from space. CTV's Jill Makashon on the mission and the Canadian connection.
The building blocks of the planets and maybe life on Earth will arrive as a special delivery. A NASA capsule carrying 4.5 billion-year-old pieces of space rock is expected to drop into the Utah desert. Scientists are already preparing. It's the culmination of a 7-year, $1 billion project that will deliver to Earth about 250 grams of asteroid rubble if all goes to plan.
One of the big challenges of bringing the sample back to Earth is just targeting that capsule to the right point in the Earth's atmosphere so it'll land in the desired landing zone. And it has to hit a corridor in the atmosphere that's just about 3 miles wide. So that's like kicking like a 120,000-yard field goal.
Liftoff of OSIRIS-REx.
NASA's OSIRIS-REx mission launched in 2016. The robotic spacecraft, about the size of a large SUV, reached the asteroid Bennu in 2018 and spent 2 years flying around the skyscraper-sized space rock, then vacuuming rubble from its surface. This is the largest asteroid sample ever gathered, and Canada's space agency played a role.
But Canada contributed the laser altimeter, which basically is a laser rangefinder that let us make a 3D scan of the entire asteroid. And then that was used to figure out, where to land to grab these samples. And because of that, Canada will be getting a percentage of the material that's brought back for study.
The samples will also reveal more about the makeup of the asteroid, potentially protecting Earth from collisions in the future. Now all eyes are on the skies and the anticipated arrival of that special capsule, a delivery that will launch new learning in space science and maybe a better understanding of the universe. Jill Makashon, CTV News, Winnipeg.
And that's a snapshot of this Friday. Sandy will be here tomorrow. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you again on Monday.
CTV National News, Canada's #1 newscast. 5 crucial questions to expose the truth. Who's at risk? What needs to change? When will justice be done?
There was actually a plot to kill you.
Where's the proof? Why did this happen? Watch W5 Saturdays at 7 on CTV.